Welcome back to On Time with Alex and happy Monday. Today's the first episode of the Daily Show where I'm going to bring you a few quick hits on different topics from wellness to sports to fashion and culture. But today is all about sports and we are going to start with some of the news in Miami, my home of the past 2 years. As you know, Messi is now on Inter Miami. He was welcomed with a massive crowd of over 20,000 people in the DRV PNK Stadium in Fort Lauderdale. It wouldn't have been complete though without the torrential rain that came down, flooding parts of the arena, but nevertheless, he gave his speech in Spanish. He's very excited to be there, and I think Miami is just as excited, if not more, that this legend is bringing his game to the city of Miami. I am very excited to be tapping in to soccer a bit more, or should I say football, for his debut game against the Cruz Azul team in Fort Lauderdale this Friday. Tickets are starting at about $250, going up to about $10K, but there are one or two seats that, you won't believe this, are going for $56,000. I mean, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal for Miami, so very exciting news there. Moving on to American football, there are some little less exciting and a little more disappointing things to discuss, especially in college football. So I'm very excited for the season that's coming, but a lot of changes are happening over there with Northwestern football. The head football coach was fired, but it's not only the football team. The head baseball coach was also fired. So, there has been a lot of controversy around how college athletes are treated and some of the toxic culture that is just running rampant through all collegiate athletics, but especially some of the men's teams around injury reporting, around hazing. That is why the head coach, Pat Fitzgerald, was fired from the football head coach position at Northwestern due to hazing allegations that were actually brought to light in the Daily Northwestern newspaper over the weekend. And this sounds like something out of a movie, but sadly, this is reality. 2 former players, and I'm sure more, confirmed the allegations that really barbaric and disturbing hazing was happening throughout the year. The baseball coach was let go due to toxic culture around discouraging injury reporting and also racism. So just things that are completely unacceptable and shocking, to be honest, at this point in time. Former MLB player and World Series champ Brian Anderson will be taking over as the head coach for the baseball team to lead those athletes. I just really can't even wrap my head around what they're going through right now. It's really a huge disappointment and really a letdown for these athletes that are putting so much time and energy into their athletic career. I know myself how stressful that is, let alone having a coach that is so controversial and can be just so mentally stressful. So I'm hoping that they're getting through this time okay. So moving on to a little bit of a less dark topic, Summer League just wrapped up, the NBA Summer League out in Vegas, and one of the biggest talks of the town that I keep hearing on every other show and podcast is about Victor Wembanyama. So Wemby is obviously one of the most hyped athletes of all time, and no one has been as hyped going to the NBA since LeBron James. I mean, what does that say about his level of skill and talent coming from France? But one of the biggest conversations around Wemby is he going to put on muscle? And it's not even really a question for his camp, as they're really against him putting on significant muscle, significant weight. His frame is very thin and very tall. I just don't think a lot of the media perspective is as credited as maybe it should be. I think a lot of the opinions are not as credited. They're coming from people who have really never been in a position of being however tall, 7'2", and a highly skilled basketball player. He probably would have challenges if he were to change his frame by adding on muscle. And a lot of former athletes are actually saying that they think his injury risk is increased by being thinner and on the thinner side, but his trainer has explained that when you add a lot of muscle mass onto a tall and thin frame, it can have consequences that shouldn't be ignored. You have different issues with the weight that your feet bear and the injury risk that can be increased when you have a different field of motion. You have a completely different way of playing when you weigh more. They say fat don't fly, but muscle does fly. So I do think that if Wemby were to put on some muscle, it would only protect him. But I think it's not about putting on 50 pounds of muscle. Earlier on First Take, the group did mention that he got to connect with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had a tremendously long career, really played with longevity, and showed that you can play as a less muscular, as a lankier player. However, we are in a different era now, and that is one of the conversations, one of the schools of thought is that when you're going up against guys like LeBron and Giannis, your injury risk is there no matter how big you are, just because of how physical the game really is. And that's also a huge difference between European basketball and American basketball. The physicality is on another level, and you do have to have some muscle. It is protective, and I know there's been some comparison to the other really famous rookie, Chet Holmgren, and he had an injury in his foot. He had the Liz Franks injury, and that is one that happens, in the foot from a awkward land. And I don't necessarily think that injury has to do with being quote-unquote frail, but it does help to have a really, really stable and strong ankle and feet. And it's not to say that Wemby isn't training that way. If you look at his trainer and some of the videos that he has of what they do and some of his interviews, he is very skilled, very educated, and knows how to produce that stability, build strength and mobility in an athlete. So I think either way, Wemby is going to be fine, and people need to just stop with this conversation around he needs to get bigger, because that is his body type, and that's the type of player that he is. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how he does and how his body evolves as a 19-year-old. I think everybody changes from 19 to 25, so it should be interesting. That's all we have time for today, so I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This is On Time with Alex, the Daily Show. Talk to you guys soon.